All right. One more time. Good morning. Before I start this webinar, I would like to give one moment of respect to our friend and President of the IT Service Management for Malaysia, Shiva Prakash Rao Appalanaidu. I know that the work we're going to discuss here today is the kind of content Rao really wants us to push for the forum. This is the frame for everything that follows in this webinar. This is not a story about a bad strategy, bad people, poor decisions. It is a story about what happens when every right decision adds another layer. Think about the last major improvement initiative in your organization. And let me ask a question. How many of those improvements are still running exactly as designed today? And the one thing behind it is that every problem produced a rational fix, something we thought that was really needed. It related to strategy, governance, frameworks, processes. Each decision we made was correct. Each decision we made was a necessity. Each decision we made adds another layer. And we come to the conclusion that the organization didn't get stuck because of people failed. It actually got stuck because we succeeded at solving the wrong version of the problem. Let me give an introduction about Horizon, and I hope you can resonate with that story. Horizon Enterprises is a well-respected company that makes every product people actually use. Smart kitchen appliances, efficient delivery software, reliable office systems. And Horizon looks like a dream place to work. People are sharp. Most of them have years of experience, university degrees, and they are really proud in what they do. The strategy is clear. Everyone can repeat the company's vision word for word, even in meetings. They deliver seamless experiences, innovate responsibly, and grow together. And that is the tagline that lives everywhere in the organization. And each department is actually really good at what they do. Engineers ship reliable code. The sales teams hit all the targets they need to hit. The support teams resolve customer problems quickly. Everything looks great on paper. Because if we really zoom in the morning stand-up, the marketing teams talks enthusiastically about a new bold campaign that will delight customers. Down the corridor, product development team hears about the strategy and they translate it into launch faster, fewer features. The finance team hears it, they interpreted it as cut cost and stay on the budget. The operational team hear the strategy and they think it means keep the machine running no matter what. It's the same strategy all over the organization, but every team and every department translates it differently. And the result? Projects look great on paper, but not in real life. If you listen to what is going on in the organization, emails fly back and forward. People start complaining, this was not in our scope, or you should have told us earlier. Fingers are pointing, blame is flying around, meetings get longer. Everybody feels very, very busy. Yes, yet if we look at the real progress, it goes slow and it is frustrating. And here's what it is. Horizon is not a broken organization. They're just exhausted by their own solution. And the instinct, the rationale, is to reach out for the next thing to solve the issues we are dealing with. A new methodology, a new process, a better process, and the cycle just continues. What if it isn't the absence of the right answer? What if it is that we keep asking the same question? Here are a few guiding principles. Rationalize before you optimize. Understand the root cause before you improve. Take a step back before you take a step forward. We know these phrases, but do we really execute them? And this is exactly the challenge where I want to talk about in this webinar. We have had years of experience in helping organizations implementing different kind of methods, methodologies, processes, best practices, name it, the list goes on. And frequently it draws back to the same conclusion. The process is a logic. The methodology is sound, is being used by many organizations. The best practices are best practices. Many experts around the world have helped building it. There's nothing wrong with these scenarios. There's something else. And that is basically, we don't take the whole scope of improvements in our mind when we do these things. We look in a very linear way only at these methods and methodologies. And that thought and that experience has basically been the foundations for us to develop the GITO approach. It's an approach. It's not a new model. It's not a new framework. It is not a best practice. It is a layer on top of everything to make sure that we have the right checkpoints, that when we make improvements, when we try to create better governance, when we try to make innovation really work in an organization, that we have hit all the check marks to make sure that it is sound. Yeah? I don't need to explain what organizations need to do in terms of governance or innovations. Most organizations already have some form of governance. They have some form of innovation. They have change programs. They do improvement cycles. And what is really important to understand behind that is that GITO is not a project. It's not a sequence. It's a permanent rhythm that lives in the DNA of an organization. So to get a little bit more grip on what I'm hoping to convey to you, let's go to each element a little bit more in depth. Starting with governance. Yeah. Your organization definitely has some form of governance in place. The question is it really directing the work, or has it become the work? And especially when I look at these best practices that we use in IT, ITIL, COVID, name it, they are the tools, they are the instruments. And to govern means we really ensure that those instruments really work, that they give the right direction. And this is a really important element to understand. The 25th of May, we really drive to the depth of governance in a separate webinar. Make sure you put that in your calendar. You make sure that we address that to you. But there is a lot to explain about governance and what really makes it effective and really what governance is not. Yeah? And let me stress that out a little bit. A governance system that only works when people are calm, when people don't feel the pressure, that is not a governance system. It's a wish. In a good working governance, we are not crossing boundaries, we push them. A good working governance is not to keep us at bay in an organization. Sure, we have to make sure that we fulfill the regulatory requirements, the compliance the rules and regulations, but a good governance system achieves that while keeping in mind that as an organization, we need to move. And that is a really important mindset when we start thinking about governance. Yeah, there are a few checkpoints. Ask your team tomorrow, how does your work connect to the strategy? Will they hesitate to answer that? Innovate. When did your organization last solve a problem in a genuine new way and embedded that the solution really had effects in such a way that it is not a spot solution, in such a way that it is not a solution isolated in one team, in such a way that the improvement you do in one team doesn't cause negative effect in other teams or other departments. Frequently, the way we approach innovation or improvements is really focusing on an isolated problem in a team, in a department, in a service, in a solution or product we want to give to the market. And that is what we solve, without really thinking about the end-to-end effects in an organization. Good innovation is not about solving things with a workaround or a quick win. Good innovation is really about embedding it in the organization, making sure that it works throughout the organization as it was intended to be. Transform. Sorry, I'm still at Innovate. Yeah, so innovation is not an event. Yeah, it is not a project. Innovation is not a workshop, a hackathon, or so on. The way we approach through the GITO approach innovation is it is a discipline that really is a responsibility for everybody in the organization. It is not just the innovation team or the continual improvement team that is responsible for this. It really requires an engineering mindset throughout the organization where we can critically look at what works and what doesn't work. And if the effect or the efficiency is missing, what can we do about it? But before we start there, what are the reasons that we are in this scenario? And solve those reasons first before you create another workaround on top of the problem you try to solve. And if we do a good job, then every solution is embedded in the organization and we don't have to solve it later from scratch again and again and again. And that is an important element to really embed. Yeah. Think about the last transformation in your organization. I had that question before. Yeah, and the question now is, did it really change what people do? Or is it just what people say they do? Yeah. A good transformation doesn't live on paper. A transformation lives in the people. And we will go into this further, but we will realize that actual transformation is not about the tools or the technology. It's about behavior in an organization and the adoption of the transformation itself. Yeah, so if we dive into that, the reason most transformation fail is not technical. And we can look at the information that is available in the market. There are many companies that have tried to do this. The big five of consulting firms really know this. Change management gurus know this. Yeah, and we know this for the last 2 decades that we try to do changes and transformations in the Asian market. 70 to 80% of transformation are really about how people adopt to a change. They are not about processes. They are not about technology. It's all about adoption. Yeah. And if we do, and here is the few checkpoints. How do we embed this? If that is the question, people are genuinely interested how we can make it better. Yeah. If people come with a response, when does this project end? Because we have so much more to do, then it doesn't land in an organization, and it becomes more a compliance and another push that we need to follow in the organization without having the real attention inside. And then the last one in the GITO loop, optimize. Yeah. Optimization is not just about cost reduction. That is just half of the job. That is just part of it. In a good optimization cycle, whatever you gain is being reused in the organization to do other things that require their attention. Yeah. In a good scenario, when we optimize, every time the cycle compounds, every time we make it better. It's not a step back, it's a step forward. Not with what I mentioned in innovation, with workarounds, but solutions that are truly embedded in the organization. And I think that optimization is the most misunderstood part in organizations. They treat it as a cost reduction, cut the budget, cut the headcount, rationalize the suppliers. It is an outcome that we eventually try to achieve, but how we get to that outcome is something else. And that is exactly the answer we try to give with the GITO approach. Yeah. Every optimization is energy and fuel in the organization. Efficiency gained, capacity free. We reuse that to do and solve other challenges we have in our organization. We try to remove the waste in an organization, increase earning capacity, reduce burning capacity. And though these are all four really important mindsets that we push with the GITO model, this is the foundation of the GITO model. What is really behind it is that true efficiency in organizations is not created by models, is not created by best practices or tools or name it. It is created by people. And that is probably a core enabler that we need to focus on. And that is where the cycle around the GITO approach becomes so relevant, because it is really about behavior and behavioral management. It's about collaboration. It's about leadership, proper leadership that is stimulating and motivating in an organization. Yeah, and the actual motivation of the people. If those four enablers are satisfied, we see real effects. Let me explain that a little bit. Yeah. Before that, let me ask one question. If you look at the transformation, yeah, one thing that is really important to understand here is that I can have a really good strategy in an organization, but strategy doesn't execute itself. People do, always. Yeah. So what percentage of people were doing things in a new way after a transformation? After 6 months. Decline. This happens very, very frequently in organization. Yeah, and a different approach we try to take with the GITO is it is not pushing a new policy, a new process, or a new approach into an organization. It's first understanding, based on the behavioral aspects, where is an organization now? Yeah. Understand the gap between the current and the desired behaviors that are needed to execute an intervention in an effective way. Yeah. Once we understand that gap between where we are right now and where we want to be, we can enable a good cue, routine, reward system and conditions around it that makes new behaviors automatic. Yeah? And one thing that you will understand, but it is not limited to that, behavior is very, very much driven with how we measure people. Which means, yeah, and we know them as OKRs or KPIs. If you have stupid KPIs, you get stupid behavior. And it is really important to understand those mechanisms. And making a stupid KPI is easy. Making a good KPI is not straightforward, it's not simple. We really need to understand behavioral aspects before we start measuring people. If we measure the right things, we get the right behavior. And out of that right behavior come the right effects. And then It doesn't stop there. It actually starts there. Then we need to track the adoption. Yeah, observable signals that really helps us to understand where an organization is and what teams do and how people in those teams behave. Not self-reporting, actual observation. Yeah, and one thing that we always need to understand with a transformation or a project, if we ask people to do different things, that is, and you can look at the researches in neuroscience. Our brain always defaults to habits, and with understanding that new behavior is metabolically expensive for our brain. Yeah, and most implementation plans totally ignore this effect. And we don't do a project to stay within budget, in scope, and in time. We do a project to actually get the benefits out of that. And it is just amazing that we ignore the last part, how people adopt to the outcome of a project and actually create something in an organization that has real effects. Collaboration. One thing that we approach in GITO in a slightly different way is we design for the culture that exists, not the one that should exist. And that is a mechanism. If I look at, I can just look at LinkedIn and I see all the wise remarks of the gurus and the people that know better what culture is and how we should approach it. That is nice to look at, and definitely you can learn something from it. I learn a lot from it. It gives me new insights, but this is not a solution. We need to start where we are today. Now, what is our culture? How do people do? How do we behave? What are our core beliefs in an organization? Yeah, and what is truly important to understand behind that is where we do this transformation. Where in the world, what are the local cultures? Yeah, and in a high-powered distant environment, structured methods create space for honest input without requiring public challenge of seniority. Yeah, the goal here is not to westernize the room. What we really try to do is to move the needle intentionally. And one question that is worth asking yourself this week, where in your organization do real concern surface after the decision, rather than before it? And when we talk about collaboration, this is a really important start. Yeah? When a collaboration is directed from management, management sees a problem and wants to smash it. Lower in the organization, at the departments and the teams, it is really important to understand how did we get there. Yeah? Let's give everybody their view and their input, how they experience that problem. And that gives us a much richer understanding of what we are really dealing with. This is where collaboration really starts. Yeah? And we tend to live in departments. We tend to live in teams. We tend to live in a silo organization. And I think what is really important to understand behind that is that silos don't form because people are territorial. They form because the system never gave them a safe reason to cross them. Staying with the Asian Pacific environment, organizational cultures where authority is expected to be directive will have a certain approach to change. This is not about right or wrong. This is just about what it is. And in the GITO coaching approach, and especially when we talk about leadership coaching, what we introduce is our leadership practices that are credible with hierarchical structures, the way organization really work today, while progressively building the conditions for a more distributed decision-making system. Trust is established first within the existing cultural logic. You can't deny what you are. Remember the mirror we were talking about. Yeah. Trust is established first within where we are, and then the shift in leadership style follows once credibility is in place, not the other way around. Yeah, and one thing we can look at, how team behaves, for example. When a senior leader is not there, absent, on holiday, whatever, does the team perform better? Does the team perform the same? Or does the team perform worse? And once we observe that, the answer tells you more about leadership health than any engagement survey will ever do you. This is what's really happening in organization. And that is exactly the kind of thing we need to observe. Yeah. Another remark to this one, a leader or a manager that says, I'm hitting my numbers, so why should we change? Is not a kind of leader that is willing to see the effects in a team. Yeah. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. This is just an observation that we need to really focus on how teams perform. What we see in the graph here as well is a team that is purely performing on a directive leadership principle will never perform better than the capability of the leader itself. With good coaching and good leadership principles, if a team is supported and empowered in the right way, the team is capable of performing much better than each individual in the team, including the manager. Yeah, and I think that is a kind of concept that speaks a lot in where we are in most organizations. I've seen a lot of people moving from a senior position to a leadership position without them actually being trained in leadership principles. And it's just expected from them that they execute the new role well, without giving them the tools and the abilities to do that role well. Yeah, so keep this in mind. I'm not bashing anyone. I'm not saying we have bad leadership in organizations. I see frequently that leaders are being promoted to that position without them being actually coached and effectively supported in doing that new role well. Yeah. Motivation, a very interesting one. If there are really great theoretical elements behind it, we can look at DC and Ryan, that basically sets the basic principles between autonomy, competence, and relatedness. We can look at Dan Pink, very popular for his book Drive, where he really talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These are really great tools to look at and see how it really works in organizations. The mistake we frequently make is that they are capability development and the responsibility of HR, and that's not the case. Yeah. The first thing we need to ask ourselves is when operational decisions are being made, who owns the outcome, who chooses the approach, and who is growing while we're doing that, and those are very important triggers to enable the actual transformation and translate it into motivated people in an organization. Looking at the slide here, yeah, what we see when we talk about compliance, I push a new initiative into the company. I enforce it through governance and tell people that this is how we do things in the future. I even come with metrics and KPIs to make sure that people follow it. They are being measured on it. Compliance is a behavior. It's got nothing to do with motivation. Yeah? Commitment is a belief. And it is commitment that we want to achieve in an organization. Think back about what we discussed earlier in to govern. It is not about people following rules. It is about people being committed to what we try to achieve. And this part is very, very elementary in creating true organizational performance. A few ways that we can use to check it. Yeah. When you ask people, can they really explain why their work matters? Yeah. In their own words, if people can explain what they do really matters to the organization, then we have commitment. You know, if people hesitate, have to look at the books and how they should behave, the only thing you have there is compliance. Yeah. And I think Engagement during a program or a project is easy to buy. Commitment, on the other hand, after attendance is what you actually are looking for and should be designing for. Yeah. Now, when we look at govern, innovate, transform, optimize, when we look at the behavioral aspects and the conditions around the enablers, behavior, collaboration, leadership, motivation. If you reflect back to your organization, there is only one question that you need to realize. How long are you being prepared to leave this unaddressed? How long are you prepared to keep on working this way? And I'm not saying this in a dystopian way, but the world is changing rapidly. We all have heard about AI and the possible capabilities of AI, which will only increase dynamics, which will only increase a challenge in the market. And if we are not prepared for that, we are not ready for it. The one thing that we need to focus on more and more in organizations is the human aspect and the human capabilities. That will not be enabled through AI anytime soon. The rest can. But if we don't leave those elements unaddressed, we will have a challenge in the future. All right, I got the point. So let's go back a little bit to Horizon. And let's go back a little bit to, let's zoom into the IT department of Horizon. Because yes, true, there's an IT service management webinar. The intention is not to throw a lot of philosophy at you, though they are important foundations to think about. As I mentioned, the GITO is not developed out of a theoretical model. It is practical insight that led to it. It's a normal evolution in managing effectiveness and change in organizations. And yes, that foundation can be used anywhere, also in the IT environment. So let's make it a challenge. Let's address something that nobody really wants to talk about because it's heavily dressed in compliance and governance. Let's address the elephant in the room. Let's dive into change management, where we see, I think change management is probably the toughest process to implement in IT service management. But it is also the process that basically is the core function of effective IT services. Everything evolves around it. Yeah. However, where I look at organizations and the way they use change management, it frequently becomes heavily regulated. It slows an organization down. Yeah, and if we look at Horizon, the typical organization I've seen so many times, requests for changes are required for all changes. Yeah. The change advisory board happens 2 times a week, and it is predominantly focusing on risk and controls. And if we adopt change management in organizations that way, the natural effect you get is a pushback. Nobody wants to be slowed down. Nobody wants to be regulated. Nobody wants to be dictated in their own profession, telling a regulation unit how to do their job. And as a natural consequence, is what we see is that infrastructure management is basically more on cloud and premises in Horizon. Mainframe existed for the past. Yeah, but we already do realize that the way we manage mainframes, or in other words, the way we manage architectural environments that are really monoliths, yeah, so the monolithic infrastructure part, they don't have a real challenge with the way change management is executed. They actually benefit from it because those controls are really needed to make sure that changes don't go haywire and start drifting and create technical debt. The challenge really starts when we start looking at the more modern technologies, cloud, full of dynamics. Yeah, the CI/CD pipeline, especially when organizations really adopt microservices and DevOps. DevOps teams don't like change management. And in Horizon, this is exactly what happens. The agile software development teams and the DevOps teams have decided that they are fed up with all the requests for changes, stupid lengthy templates that doesn't help them. They need to ship every day. And they have decided to create their own pipeline directly. And they just abandon the whole change management environment. Yes, people are complaining, but their numbers and the way they are being measured is on velocity, not on stability. So they have a totally different drive and a totally different purpose behind it. Security start bypassing it, especially when there are big threats. We can't wait for a change advisory board to make a decision. This is an alarm. This is a hazard right now that needs to be tackled right now. So security changed their own change environment, implemented their own change management approach. And now change management gets very, very fragmented throughout the organization. And the question starts with, did we implement change management to control an organization? Or is there something else behind it? Yeah. And the moment we look at that, because what really happens today, and this is a statistic that applies basically everywhere in the world, 80% of all the incidents we have are due to changes. If nothing would change, we are able to keep and create a very, very stable environment. It is the dynamic that causes the disruption. And it is those dynamics we want to control in a healthy way. We don't want to stop dynamics. We want to empower these dynamics, but in such a way that these dynamics are executed in a healthy and safe way. Yeah. So within Horizon, when we assess what we see, again, the standard framework, the standard effects, 80% of the incidents are due to changes. Even when we started with one change advisory report every 2 weeks, people start complaining about it. We increase it to every week, and now we even have change advisory report twice a week. Yeah. We have a very structured request for change template in which we try to satisfy all the different scenarios, yet still people resist. People still don't want to use it. People, whenever they need to fill in a request for change form, are very hesitant. They really fill in the bare minimum of information. Let's get it over with. That is the behavior we see when we try to push those things in an organization. But the real intent of change management is not to slow an organization down and to throw a lot of governance and controls at them. The real intent of change management is really risk control. Yeah? Prevent incidents. That is what we really want to achieve with it. Yeah, and this is, if we look at how change management is implemented in the majority of organizations, due to all the governance that we throw around it, we achieve the exact opposite. Yeah. So let's dive in a little bit about the purpose of change management. Yeah. There needs to be a governance in place, but governance is not done by a template. Governance is not done by enforcing people to follow the change management process. Governance is to look at the outcome. A good managing, a good change management. Let me start over again. Good change management really lets us achieve a good, healthy change environment where the amount of risks and incidents and disruptions are being reduced. That is what we want to measure, the outcome, not following the process. Yeah? Then, when we talk about innovate and how does it apply here? How does apply the innovate approach in GITO to this scenario? We do not just look at how change management needs to be executed. We look at the customers of this process. So we do go to the development teams. We do go to the security team. We do go to the infrastructure team and have a discussion with them what they need to let this process work effectively and well for them. If we can satisfy that need, we don't create resistance. we create exactly what I mentioned in the previous chapter. We create engagement. People actually like to use the change management process because they feel supported by it rather than being controlled by it. Yeah? Then transform. This is all about setting the right triggers in the organization in terms of behavior, collaboration, leadership. Yeah? This is not a process design. 99% of all ITIL implementations or IT service management implementations, the world is bigger than ITIL. All these implementations are focusing on implementing the process. And I truly hope you guys realize that this is a very, very limited view. Yeah? And then we have implemented it and we expect that this is how it works. And this is really the reason why a lot of these scenarios create a lot of friction in an organization. That is where the optimize comes in. It is near to impossible to implement something new, expecting that it will work great. We have a lot of adaptation going on. People need to adjust to the way they do things. People need to change the way they think about things. People change the way they need to do activities. If you expect that if you implement the process and then things are straight away better, you make a mistake. Yeah? A good process implementation doesn't stop with the implementation. It's where it starts. Now we start to continue and look where it causes friction, where it causes risk, where it works effectively. Yeah, and if we do that right, just imagine, 80% of the incidents are caused by changes. What if I can reduce that number? How much capacity will I free up in my organization? Or let's make it direct. How much capacity will you free up in your organization if you could prevent 80% of your incidents? The amount of capacity you free up really enables you to do a lot more improvement at a much faster rate. Yeah, and that is where Optimize is truly focusing on. Yeah, so change management is not one fit for all. Every different team has a different need. Yeah, if we look at this, DevOps, CI/CD, yeah, it is a continuous flow of changes, but the changes are small. The level of risk is very low, and we can create a change management approach that really does do pipeline control and proper feedback loops with retrospectives and reviews. Yeah, not every change individually has to be under the loop and assessed carefully. The traditional monolithic environment in the infrastructure, traditional ITSM, that is weekly, it is well planned. There is a potential significant impact for each change. So we can structure that with a proper request for change approach, a proper change advisory board around it. When we look at infrastructure and network changes, they don't happen daily. Yeah, and though there is a difference between the traditional network and the cloud-related access, but on the average, this is much better under control. And there's a lot of things in this scenario, especially when we talk about cloud, that can be automated. An automated CI/CD pipeline helps a lot in having a proper gate before you push things into production. Yeah. A monthly control, most of these changes are infrastructural and have a potential high impact. So it is important to have the right governance structure around it, full test gate, classic governance and things like that. Security is very much event driven. Every security incident is time sensitive. It's critical if we don't act on it strictly. And for security, we need to create a fast track approach, yeah, which is really based on the potential impact of each security issue and relate to that in this way. Yeah. So different teams, a different approach to change management. While you still have a central process, you tune it for your customers. Yeah, and I think people tend to forget that this is the real nature behind it. Yeah. And then there is, and I think this is also a challenge where most organizations fail in. You create controls, you create processes, you create governance for the majority of the cases, but there are always exceptions. How do you deal with exceptions? If you try to create a governance model that tries to cover all exceptions, you come to a very, very complicated environment that doesn't work at all. And it is too complex for people to understand. Create controls, create processes, create governance for, and this is the 80-20 rule, that covers 80% of the cases. The rest is exceptions. The rest are exceptions. And you want to induce the concept, and I know this is very risky what I'm going to say here, but you want to introduce the concept of intelligent disobedience, meaning that if we deal with a scenario where the standard rule doesn't apply, we escalate. And when I say disobedience, it doesn't mean that people can just go ahead and do what they want. No, we realize it is an exception where the rule doesn't apply. We escalate it and we discuss how we act on that. And this is especially crucial when I talk about change management. Yeah, and we always have high priority incidents, high priority problems, or even contingency related challenges like business calamities. And we need to have a mechanism around it, not a standard process on how we deal with it. We need to have a mechanism around it, how we tackle those things in an effective way. Yeah. All these discussions have done in Horizon. Yeah. And now we still have one function. It is what we call the change management process, but 4 models, and each model fits the different environment they need to support. Teams stop complaining about requests for change because it has been tuned to their need and their dynamics. And people start seeing that change management, instead of dictating them, starts protecting them. Change management as a process starts working in their interest rather than they work in the interest of change management. Yeah. Finally, we see the needle moving and the amount of incidents related to new changes are going in the right direction. And that is what we really want to achieve with change management, not the process, not the controls, the actual effects behind it. Yeah. And if I now zoom back to Horizon, because I think what is really important is that we don't do IT service management for the IT department. Eventually, we have IT, technology, and services to support the business or your external customer. And we need to look at that effect. And if we look at the more modern versions of IT service management, we don't talk about achieving SLA targets anymore. We talk about achieving the business outcome. And that is where Horizon starts moving at. Yeah, and when we look at the effects in Horizon, the transformation we started 6 months ago did not start with a big announcement. It started with a different question. Look in the mirror. Yeah. Where specifically is strategy failing to become a new behavior in this organization? And how can we change that? How can we avoid that different teams, different departments, and this happens in the majority of the organizations, start running in a different direction? How can we create synergy from the top and then start cascading it down in the organization? So we see alignment between departments, we see alignment between teams, and we see effects and outcomes that are not isolated within teams, but show the actual effects of what we try to achieve as an organization. Yeah. So when we looked at Horizon, first where we started with was not a project or a program. We looked at the behavior in the organization, because this is, as I said, this is where it all starts with. If the behavior is not right, better methods, best practices, methodologies, frameworks, they are not going to solve it. Behavior needs to solve with behavior-related activities. Yeah, so a baseline assessment of where behavior is right now, understand the difference between where we are right now and what the desired behavior is, and slowly works through that. Collaboration comes next. Yeah. When we look at the different teams, there is a lot of struggle in communication. Yeah? We are very good when we create a team to immediately create a wall around it, team level, department level, and we stop communicating. So let's start breaking away these walls first. Yeah, it reduces the amount of handoffs. It reduces the amount of reworks in organizations. Yeah, and so people start actually talking to each other and working together. Yeah, and the next step is leadership. Yeah, proper coaching. Help managers what leadership is about. Help them to work on their own challenges before they can start working on the team challenges. Yeah. As I said, I've seen a lot of managers that totally are not educated in how to deal with people effectively. And here's the funny thing: if you see them operate in a company versus how they operate with their own family, there is a huge gap. Yeah, and I'm not saying that your colleagues are your family, but they are still people. They still have the same human expectations everybody else does. Start focusing on that element. And the last part is motivation, deliberately. Yeah, and motivation is a consequence of behavior, collaboration, and leadership. It is not something we push. It's a natural, evolving element that comes out of it. Yeah. Now, purpose sessions where people can already see that changes are happening, that the needle is moving for the better for the company, for the better for people. Yeah, and if we look at Horizon now, same people, they work in the same building, they have the same ambition, but what changed is the system they are working in. Yeah, and I think that is really the drive we want to create with the GITO approach. Yeah, now, if we look at the numbers, beautiful, and the numbers are real. Yeah, they come from a combination of different client engagement we had: finance, logistics, aviation, telecommunication, and so on. But the numbers are not the focus as a driver to create change. The numbers are a consequence. Yeah. If I zoom into to Horizon right now, I see that AI initiatives that have been underperforming finally start creating results. Yeah. Because the technology was finally surrounded with people that were able to introduce the right human capabilities around it to make it work. Yeah. And here is such an important statement. Organizational performance is created by people, not by processes, not by tools. AI is a tool. Yeah. And just keep that in mind. It's the work of people. And the question is not whether your organization faces the same challenges Horizon is facing. Most organizations do. Yeah. It's a question I asked you before. Do you think your organization will survive if it continues the way it is going right now? Do you see opportunities in how that can be improved and work on them? Yeah, and if you need help, you know how to reach out. But I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things you can do without externals, things you can do yourself, and start prioritizing them. Yeah. Now, zooming out a little bit back to the GITO approach. Yeah, as I said, I really talked about the core elements: govern, innovate, transform, optimize, and that we only achieve those things in an effective way when the behavior types, yeah, the enablers are in place: behavior, collaboration, leadership, motivation. And around that, there are a lot of processes and methodologies that support it, yeah, and a lot of best practices. Just keep in mind that the full picture of the GITO approach and all its methods and methodologies around it are being used in any scenario whenever they have the right purpose. And so when we talk about ITSM, I think what is really important to understand from ITSM, and I still think, and I think that is an opinion I have since the beginning of the 90s when I got introduced to IT service management. It is really said that the word IT is in front of it because it's about service management. That is the true objective behind it. And that we execute it differently in IT, that is related to the IT complexity we have. It doesn't mean that the business does not need to do service management. They definitely need to do service management, just in a total different way than it is done in the IT department. And if the business has a total different way of doing things, again, we have the wall between the business and the IT department. And I see a lot of IT departments being severely isolated in this discussion. And let's break that wall. And service management is for the entire organization, not just IT. Yeah. And when we look at that and look at all the processes and methodologies, realize that they are means to achieve something. They are not standalone. And that's exactly what they are. They are tools. And different tools can be used in many different scenarios under many different conditions. That's before we round up and go to the Q&A. If you really want to know in depth about our GITO approach, get the paper. Yeah. How do you get the paper? You can ask us, but you can also ask Eileen. Eileen is our AI agent. You can ask it many different questions for your specific scenario and how can it be approached. Keep in mind, of course, Eileen is developed as a lead generator for us. But there is a lot you can do with Eileen that purely gives you the insight in how you can approach challenges in your own organization. Yeah? You don't have to go through the full cycle and go to the proposal. Go to it, look at it, play around with it. In Eileen, you have a few opportunities to download the GITO paper, where we talk about GITO itself and where it comes from and how we actually approach it. Yeah. GITO.mindmagine.com. Just go there, play around with it. And a few other things. Yeah. So what we discussed today in this webinar is all about the introduction of GITO. We have deep dive sessions where we go into govern, innovate, transform, optimize. Stay in touch. We follow us on LinkedIn. We will inform you about these other webinars and let us know what you think. All right. A Q&A. Now I've seen a lot of questions coming by. Yeah, give me a second here. Let me address this first with Grace. Grace, have you been able to look at the questions and prioritize them? There are a lot of questions, and guys, thank you so much for your input. I don't know everything. That is not my intention either. I don't know your specific conditions, and that is exactly where this session is for. What I cannot answer here, try to do that with Eileen. Grace, what have you been able to do? You have a few top questions where we can work on?
Yeah. Sorry. Let's start with the first questions. The first question is, how do we navigate through the mindset of people that indirectly pushing for rejection even before a new policy or decision announced? Should we practice inclusive nature throughout the organization at various levels before change or decision introduced? What do you think about that?
Okay, so the first trigger that really comes up straight away after this question, this is a stress trigger. If people already start resisting before you have had the ability to explain to them what you want and what you try to achieve, this is normally, we call that availability bias. It has a lot of historical load behind it, where people have been forced in different directions in the past, and frequently it really worked against them rather than in their favor. The solution to that is not to tell people what you want. The solution to that is first sit with them and listen to what they are struggling, and slowly introduce the actual challenge you want to solve and how they would approach it. I can promise you, if you take that approach, you get a lot more collaboration from the people, rather than when you try to push a new idea into their brain and expect that they simply follow because you think it's a good idea. People don't work that way. Our mind doesn't work that way.
Okay,
Grace?
thanks, Michiel. Let's go for the second questions. I've noticed that during our town hall, many colleagues prefer not to voice out questions or concern in the moment, but raise them privately afterwards. Sometimes because they are worried about saying the wrong thing or being judged. How
Yeah.
can we create a more open, psychologically safe, and collaborative environment where people feel comfortable addressing issue directly during the sessions?
Yeah,
I
that is, sorry. I
I
was too
guess
enthusiastic to jump in the question, Grace. Go ahead.
okay, I guess it's something that we have been trying to address for the last few years. That's it.
Yeah. So look at the nature of a town hall. A town hall is not designed for interaction. A town hall is designed for one-way communication. So when you try to confuse that, you create conflicts. There is another element behind it, and I can make it black and white, but and then you will understand it. Some people are extroverts; they don't mind speaking up in large crowds. Some people are introverts, and you never hear them, and that is a missed opportunity. Yeah, the people that are really introvert, they like the deep thinking before they consider to translate that into voicing out, and those are the aspects you want to realize. So the town hall is the one-way communication. It is addressed that way. But I always think it important with a town hall. I've seen this mistake being made in many organizations where they go location by location by location, and the first location, which is always headquarters, and they start with the town hall, and one week later, the town hall is scheduled for a different location. You really think that information doesn't travel real quick through an organization? Here is a big challenge, because the moment the town hall information lands in a rumoring channel, people will explain interpretations of what they thought they hear. And a lot of the actual message of the town hall gets totally destroyed by the noise an organization creates. So just realize those things first. A town hall is one-way communication. How to get people involved with it is deliberately and schedule short meetings. They can be delegated to the managers and the team leads to get their input. You want to get their input, because without their input, you don't create commitment, you don't create engagement. Yeah, so that is so important. All of this doesn't have to be done in the same town hall meeting. A town hall meeting is the message. What happens after that message, that is what you want to capture. So design for it. Yeah, make sure that you have follow-up sessions where people can discuss it. Make sure that you have follow-up sessions where people can really voice out their concerns. And if you are in an organization where you know that you deal with a lot of people that are more towards the introvert side, do small teams. Don't do big teams. People don't voice out in those settings. Yeah, so don't start sounding like a broken record here. Yeah, design for it. Make sure that you involve people. Cascade it down to smaller teams and ask for their input. And that is not it. Now the actual part comes. Without feedback loops, you do not learn. So make sure that information that you get out of the team's discussions is being fed back up to the actual message you try to convey in the town hall, and make an assessment where people really are. They start working from that.
Okay, I see a lot more of discussion going at the moment. Let's try the next one. Guma is asking, from my from my previous experience, implementing change management wasn't easy when people do not understand the concept or why the needs. Implementation start with small steps, then moving towards better change management. What do you think about that?
Okay, so first of all, we need to understand the nature of a change. Trust me, I'm a big fan of iterative approaches. Short cyclic step, where after each step we review, learn from it before we decide what we're going to do in the next step. Not every change is suitable for that approach. Yeah, this is a really lengthy discussion I had it started 15 years ago, where suddenly the word agile popped up into the market and everybody wanted to be agile. There was nothing wrong with agile. And in the exact same phrase, there is nothing wrong with our traditional methods either. The waterfall model has worked for years. Yeah. And what we need to understand is what is the nature of the change and who are we as an organization and how can we approach that? Not everything can be solved with agile. Not everything can be solved with waterfall. Again, remember what I said with tools and methodologies earlier. There are tools. And you use the right tool for the right problem. Yeah. So yes, I like iterative approaches, take small steps to manage a change. If you can plan a change upfront very well, but you also realize that what you want to achieve is fairly complex in terms of culture, behavior, not the technology. That is not always the challenge in a change transformation, but from an organizational perspective. A small step iterative way makes the change more organic. It becomes so much more natural for people to follow it and to align with it. And I think that is the most preferred way. But if tomorrow Donald Trump does do something and the whole world is in panic, you don't have time to plan. And you need to do very deliberate steps immediately. And that is where we take a different approach. Yeah, so keep that in mind.
Thank you, Michiel. There's another thought about this, the explanation you have just now. The thought is that there's also depends on the mindset from top management, where
Yes.
if we have failed X percentage of changes, they create a very tight operational rigors to review every CRQ to gain back the trust, which then add multiple layer or revisit the change management process, additional checkpoints. Changes are inevitable as part of doing maintenance, upgrades, introduce new features, updating source code, doing patching, addressing bridges. What do you think about that?
So, okay, let me start because this is a lot in one sentence to consume. Let me start from the first trigger I got here. Leadership. Yeah. The one challenge that I had dealt with quite a bit in organizations when digital transformation came into place, when agile came into place, is that the leadership team wanted the organization to change. And within that same discussion, they exclude themselves. And that doesn't work. Changing a culture, changing approaches in an organization doesn't start with programs and projects. It starts with leadership by example. And that is where we need to start with. And whatever we expect that an organization needs to change, that change doesn't start at the bottom and works its way up. It is the exact other way around. It starts at the top, where the leadership team discuss this is what we want to do in the organization. Those are the challenges and risk we see if we don't make a difference. How should we send that message in the organization? And frequently you will see that that is not a message that have to be translated in words. People are very good at observing each other and picking cues out of that. a lot of examples are not explained. They are done. Yeah. And the moment that is the drive, then it will automatically cascade down into an organization. Yeah, and I realize that I have not answered the whole question, Grace. But I hope you realize that changing an organization is a consequence of something. Yeah, it is, and it doesn't happen naturally, and you cannot push it. It needs to be stimulated. It needs to be motivated.
Thanks, Michiel.
So we do a last one, Grace, and
Yes,
then
but
we round it up. What I think is important for everyone to realize, because I really have seen a lot of questions, and I'm really thrilled to answer them one by one. So let's just make the deal that I give it a follow-up after this webinar. If you think you have a question that might be nice to tease Eileen with, go ahead. I think that this is a perfect opportunity. That is exactly why we created her. The moment I say her, I realize how scary it is, the way we came with AI agents, because we really start to personalize it. Yeah, and it's technology, guys. It's not human. Not yet. Not anywhere close there. So, sorry. We gave it a follow-up. Last one, Grace.
okay, this one is a bit long, so bear with me. This question is coming from a participant from CAB, I think. Sorry. So the question is, we do not have CAB sessions having independence approval by service owners as they hold the accountability better. Our CAB oversight offline and only for emergency. This requires strong and mature IT teams, improvement in percentage change success rate. The challenge is having the audit or compliance team to align with this. I haven't finished yet. There are a lot of misconceptions of CAB accountable and ensuring the CR will be successful. Which should be the IT service owner? How to change this perspective by the audits, compliance, and board members?
Okay.
What do you think?
This is a beautiful question, because I really admire what I heard at the beginning of the statement in the question is what it really shines through is not every change needs to be controlled the exact way, and not everything needs to be controlled. That from a change management perspective, IT change management perspective in the process, this is a really mature thought, and that is something, as I said, I admire it. It's something you definitely should pursue. And then we have compliance, which work the exact opposite way, because every nitty-gritty needs to be registered, needs to be recorded, and needs to be able to be audited. Okay, so basically, stick to this approach. It is a very mature approach. You benefit from it. Yeah, a small bug fix doesn't require the same control as implementing a new system. Those are different changes. You need to tune your controls. Just make sure that every change that you have is registered, because that is where audit's looking at. Is it registered? Does it follow a process? Make sure that you have a good differentiations between impactful changes and standard changes. So my suggestion would be, yeah, and think about the administrative part, because that is simply the burden we are talking about here. Make sure that you ease the gate to registering a standard request for change. It should not be a process that takes you 20 minutes. It's something that can be done in 2-3 seconds. Yeah, and if I zoom back all the way to the DevOps teams and the Agile teams, all these changes are already in. Most organizations use Jira. That's where the pipeline already is. That is where your backlog is. And you just capture that as your entire change backlog, yeah, and your change plan. And in most scenarios, this does satisfy the audit requirements we are looking for. Yeah.
Thank you, Michiel.
Thanks, Grace.
So we will discuss further in another session.
So not another session. We give follow-ups with emails. If I see questions that I think they are really important to dive into, and I need to take a step back here. It means that if you don't get an email back from us, that I don't take you serious. That is not the direction we're going into. But certain questions deserve a little bit more attention. There are also a lot of remarks in the chat, which I love, and I will definitely go through them. And yeah, if I have the time, I definitely get back to you. And as I said, if you have a question without strings attached, go to Eileen, play around with it. I'm pretty sure you get some good insight from that. Yeah, and yes, I'm pushing our AI agent, but I think the reason why I developed her is exactly for you guys to have something that you can ask questions to without feeling the obligations that you also need to buy something. Yeah, and that is exactly the purpose of Eileen. She is supportive, but she's been trained in a few sales tactics as well. So just look for that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michiel.
Thanks, Grace. Hey, guys. Thanks a lot for
Thanks
joining
for
us
joining.
today. Thanks for freeing up your time. I truly hope you had a good time with us and stay in touch.